Hello everyone! Hearthstone's Journey to Un'Goro expansion is out and I have been a busy bee trying out some decks. And what if I told you that there is a deck in Hearthstone that you can build for the price of less than a single legendary card and that you can play to high ranks? A deck that you can even maybe make on your first day of playing Hearthstone. Because with Journey to Un'Goro, that is possible. We are talking about Zoo, a budget version of the evergreen classic board control deck. And in this video I'm going to tell you exactly what that deck looks like and how all the cards in that work with each other. First, a few words on the history of Zoo. Zoo is a deck that focuses on playing relatively cheap minions, buffing them up, making efficient trades, controlling the board and then eventually winning because they have the board and they will just smack you in the face at that point. It's played with the Warlock class because the Warlock hero power enables you to draw more cards than your opponent, and therefore you can afford to play these cheap, not that high value minions and still win the game. Zoo has been periodically at the top of the ladder food chain. There have been different variants of that. There have been slower, more mid-rangey types that were even running cards like Sea Giant as finishers. Then there have been faster variants that top out at Doom Guard. All sorts of different types of Zoo has existed depending on what other decks are being played. Most recently, Zoo has generally been of the discard variety. So you're running lots of cards that discard your other cards from hand, which sounds pretty bad. But there are some cards that turn these negative effects into even benefits. Cards such as Malchezaar's Imp and cards such as the Silverware Golem. Crucially, both of these come from the One Night in Karazhan adventure, so if we're really looking for a free-to-play, immediately buildable Zoo type, we are going to have to disregard the discard type. Without those two cards you cannot make discard Zoo work, you will just run out of cards. There are only two cards really that could be considered in a non-discard version. One is the Doom Guard, which is pretty much a staple, and the other that could be considered is the Soulfire. Luckily, Journey to Un'Goro brings some really nice power plays that revitalize Zoo without the discard mechanic. So here is the deck list that I put together. It went through a couple of small revisions, but the core has been the same all the time. And I started playing this on launch and on NA, because NA got the patch first, so I couldn't play on EU where I usually play. And I played this for around 100 games and made it from the bottom of the ladder to rank 7. And the deck showed no signs of slowing down any significant amount, so it's definitely possible to take this to rank 5 and get that golden epic season reward. That's especially useful for new players. This deck features plenty of tokens, plenty of ways to get on the board and stay on the board. And it's also pretty nice because it teaches you very much about the fundamentals of playing Hearthstone. Zoo is a board control deck, so you generally win by eliminating your opponent's board and then hitting their face, and not going too much on the aggressive side early on. However, the decision when to trade, when to go face is a crucial one. Sometimes you just need to start pushing in that damage. Sometimes you need to leave some of the minions up so that you will be able to deal damage as well. Sometimes you want to clean up everything. Zoo is a very good deck to practice that. Against what kind of opponents can I leave minions up? Against what kind of opponents is it very important to clear everything? Zoo is very good at teaching you these basic fundamentals. It also teaches a lot about tempo and health management. You have the Warlock hero power that damages you in order to draw cards, and this is something that new players are often reluctant to use. But it's actually a key to playing Zoo, keeping up your resources. So you have a decision to make. How many minions do I want to play on the board this turn? Do I squeeze in a hero power as well, or do I just play minions? This sort of management on how much tempo do I need to generate, how much damage can I deal to myself with my hero power, how much value do I need to get from my deck. Very good lessons again. Finally, Zoo is perhaps the most demanding deck when it comes to positioning. there are lots of cards that affect cards that are on either side of them. So you have to think carefully, okay, where do I put this minion on the board? Is it good here next to that one? Is it good over there? Death rattle minions, when they die, especially minions that summon other minions, they summon the other minion on the exact spot they were. So if you want to create a big chain of minions, you want to have a buff card, then you have plenty of small minions and you want each one to attack in turn, die off, and the next one is going to come in, have the buff, attack, die off. But if you have a death rattle minion in the middle of this chain, well, the death rattle pops up and the next one in the chain does not get the buff. So you have to think about this. Which ones do I put together so that they take this buff? Which ones do I put together so that they are ready for that buff? Zoo teaches you a lot about positioning. So overall, I really like Zoo because it just teaches you good fundamentals, how to play the game. You perhaps can be more successful, especially early on. You're probably more successful if you play something like a Pirate Warrior, which is also a bit more expensive though. But anyway, you're more successful, I get that. But when you're just going face, then you don't actually learn how to play the game with more complicated decks. And Zoo is excellent preparation for more complicated decks. Your game plan with Zoo at the start of the game is get the board, stay on the board. You really need to find a 1-cost minion to play on your first turn. Sometimes if you're going second and have the coin, you might want to coin out a 2-drop, but most of the time it's better to play 2 1-drops, or in certain matchups to play 1-drop and then maybe coin out a powerful 3-drop like the Darkshire Councilman on 2. You also have some tricks up your sleeve. If you have that minion on the board, opponent plays something, you can pull an Abusive Sergeant, or maybe you can pull a Direwolf Alpha and you can buff the attack of this minion and take a favorable trade. Later in the game, when you have more mana available, you can play Knife Juggler and either play more minions or trigger the death rattles of your existing minions to get these juggles rolling. The deck has a lot of minions that either have death rattles to create more minions or that create tokens for you. Cards like Possessed Villager, cards like Firefly, then there's Egg Napper, my new favorite from the set I think, and the Devilsaur Egg, which is the slowest card in the deck list, but also potentially one of the most powerful ones. And all this token generation, multiple minion generation, it synergizes extremely well with some power cards you have, like the Knife Juggler, which throws knives at random opponents for each minion you summon, Direwolf Alpha, which gives attack buff to minions next to it, so you can chain your minions into some really big target. Or the Darkshire Councilman, which grows every time you summon more minions, including ones that come from the death rattles. And the Ravenous Pterodax, which is happy to eat a small minion in order to adapt twice and become a much more powerful minion. The real dream combo of this deck, if you're facing a slower matchup and you have the time to do it, is to put down the Devilsaur Egg on 3, followed by Ravenous Pterodax on 4. Pterodax eats the egg, you will have the 5/5 from the egg, and you will have a Pterodax that can even be a 7/7. Some really powerful swing turns can be achieved, and you couldn't really do this without adventures and expensive cards in the previous meta. But because Ravenous Pterodax is a common and Devilsaur Egg is a rare in the new Journey to Un'Goro set, you're able to build this kind of synergies into your deck much more cheaply than before. You also have access to a quite early and very powerful protective minion in Tar Creeper. Tar Creeper fits in this deck because you generally have a lot of small minions. If the opponent has minions with a bit higher health, then they can pick off your small minions one by one, but the Tar Creeper protects your board and lets you choose the trades, when you can use buffs from Abusive Sergeant, for example. So it enables you to do more of the board control game. And also in an aggressive meta, well, that 3/5 taunt is pretty good at protecting your face as well. At the top of the curve in this deck, because the meta is quite fast, I have not found a way to build this more mid-range. The Devil's Egg is already pushing it. That's the biggest compromise this deck makes in order to have some more value. But at the top of the deck's curve there's the Doom God. And Doom God is an immensely powerful minion. And one of the key aspects about playing the Doom God is to think, okay, what about the cards that I discard? Are they really worth not putting the Doom God on the board? Sometimes if you have a really important card, maybe you're able to delay it one turn if you get to play that one. Maybe drop down another card, reduce the number of cards that's discarded perhaps. But often it's just the right play to slam that Doom God down and start controlling the board, or even going face with that. That 5/7 body with the 7 health, it's an extremely good tool also for trading away opponents' minions. The main flex slots in this list that you could substitute something else instead of are the Acidic Swamp Ooze at 2 mana and the Tar Creeper at 3 mana. Well, given that I don't expect the meta to slow down, the Tar Creeper seems to be here to stay. If you found yourself consistently to be the aggressor and not that much on the defense, then the Tar Creeper could perhaps go. But I think in the current meta it's pretty good. And likewise, the same story also applies to the Acidic Swamp Ooze. It's a card that removes the opponent's weapon, so in a meta where there are lots of hunters, there are lots of pirate warriors, the Acidic Swamp Ooze is pretty good, because it can help you defend against their threats. In the case of hunter, it can prevent them from trading effectively on the board with their bow, and in the case of pirate warrior, it's just protecting your face. But it depends on the meta. I have also played some of the time this one with 2 fairy dragons instead of the Acidic Swamp Ooze, because rogue is also fairly common. And as it happens, fairy dragon is actually better against rogue than Acidic Swamp Ooze, even though rogue is a weapon user. Because rogue's weapon is generally pretty small, so it's not that effective, and rogue wants to remove minions with spells, and fairy dragon cannot be targeted by spells. So if you find yourself facing a ton of rogues, then maybe that's also a consideration. One of my absolute favorite cards in the deck has to be the Egg Napper. A 3/1 Death Rattle minion that summons 2 1/1 raptors. Before the release there was a lot of doubt on whether Egg Napper is good enough to see play. That 1 health felt just so little. But now that I have been able to actually play with these cards, then Egg Napper is really nice. And I have enjoyed playing that card a lot. If the opponent doesn't have a convenient way to trade it away, then that 3 attack can really push back some damage and get a really good value trade. I know I discussed this in my pre-release review, but now with the game actually out and having been able to play this, I'm happy to confirm that it works. There will also be gameplay videos of various versions of this deck in this channel later on, so keep an eye out for those as well. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the show, please click the like button and subscribe to my channel for more.